So Michelle's question, there's like a little implicit knowledge in there, I think.
Okay.
Maybe not everybody is on the same page yet. So one way to handle that optional statement is this of the signature block would be to write a one-line version of an if statement. And we've done those a few different examples that have made it onto the Slack that we've recorded. But let's see, maybe this is a good place for me to share my screen.
This in particular, I was thinking about making more sense in the flow, like as a reader of the code. But I know people have different styles, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to kind of center on a style. So, but yes, absolutely. I mean, I think one thing we're not trying to get is like everyone to conform exactly one way. But if people kind of have a sense of the direction and end up at the same choices, it's good. We don't want to have to go back and redo things people have already done. It's probably, for style reasons, would never make sense.
Mm-hmm.
If people are trying to choose a style, it's probably good to know the way that's preferred. Yeah, I'm going to do a share just so, let me see if I can find a good example. I don't have that yet, but. All right, let's see. Maybe this will be an example in here. Okay. So this is a one-line if statement. This right here. This is a really long one because the variable names are fairly long. But if we wanted to parse that out, I'll make a new file here so you can see this a little bit closer. And let me try to zoom in. Okay. This is essentially the same thing as writing it out longhand like this, but it can fit. It can be used in a place where you can't have multiple lines of code. So this is looking for only one line inside those Mako tags. It only can be one line of code. So you can never write the version I'm about to write out. It's essentially equivalent. So if confidential address, children of both, this whole expression here. Else, an empty string, so nothing, in other words. So you could take 4 lines of code and turn it into one. And the trade-off there is, well, you can't use that 4-line version here. It's not possible inside the attachment block. And it takes up less room. So Michelle's,
if we just break down this line, do you mind just quickly doing that? So you've got the...
Sure, yeah. So we had, let me see. I'm going to use some pseudocode because I don't know your variable names.
Okay.
But it would be something
you can
like...
actually just break it into different variables and the names would tell you, but yeah. Like you could just say,
let's just focus on the one thing at a time. So I think Maeve asked us to just to model this if statement. So let's do that first. So if
that's what I mean, but okay.
So it's like if attorney filling, something like that.
Yeah.
Then you would do attorney. Actually, it would just be the same signature, right? That's what we kind of had to establish. It's going to be user 0.signature. And else is going to be nothing. It's going to be left empty.
Got it. Right. Okay.
And the one-line version of that inside Mako tags would be users 0.signature if attorney filling else there.
Okay, so it's we've been doing something similar kind of in sheets with our formulas. So that looks familiar with one-line formulas. Lance, like the else, where you put the. I'm just.
Okay. You're like like an Excel style formula.
Yeah. Where we say if that appears in column B, then this must appear in column C. Else, but we don't say the else. You don't have the else written out. It's just in play. Okay, this
And
makes sense.
Yeah. And Michelle's question is, inside the attachment, should we do this? Should we write out that if statement like that inside the attachment block? Or should we kind of put a placeholder variable in between? So like one thing we could do would be like,
That's actually not what I'm saying.
okay, well, let's
But-
answer that question first, because I think it's still,
Sure.
and then we can circle back to clarifying it. So you might have a variable like this called signature PDF. Maybe it's like this, even, because we could still use by the way, we could still use the one-line version of an if statement inside an assignment operator. This is valid.
Okay.
Or the longhand version of it would be, let's just replicate this here. And maybe is still not answering the right question that you were asking, Michelle, but okay. And then we would have our code block be signature PDF. Does that make sense? The differences between those?
You would still have to do an if statement that way. Because each like you have two signatures two signature fields on the PDF, so that would still have to be an if statement. So for the user signature, you'd have to do signature PDF if not attorney filing else. And
so no, in this example, like what I'm simulating is, let's say we could still make it, this could be user signature. We have two signature blocks in the PDF, but this one wouldn't have to be conditional because it's always shown, right? So we did the conditional logic here in the code.
Okay, maybe I'm not understanding the contents of the code then. That's fine.
Is that at line 20 is O?
Intended, but that's fine.
Let me just put a little bit more context in there. So this is what I'm imagining. So we had this one we called certification signature, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make it a little clearer, Michelle?
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if that is the case, then yeah, much more clear. So
we're moving the logic that would go here on line 20, and this is two different ways to do it. One would be to hide it in another line of code somewhere else in the file.
Well, I don't know how you're splitting those up. I don't think my thought was relevant considering the because signature PDF equals, I see, that'd be a one-liner in the code as opposed to, so those are three different options. We could have line 14 and line 16 through.
No, we would never have both of those. That's correct. Yes.
So that's three different options. So my understanding.
This same here, like this isn't ever. This actually was just more of a pseudocode because you can't actually use this without using this intermediate variable.
Sure.
So I think that what we need to do is Lance and I need to play around with, on the basis of what we've learned here today, kind of get the logic and everything and put everything into our code. And then we can, if we get stuck, then we can reach out to you.
Being's an optimist.
We can puzzle it through by ourselves. And I think, Quentin, what was very useful today was seeing you search for things that we've already looked for and didn't find, if you know what I mean. And you just find it so easily. For example, like currency, the separator thing, I was looking in a completely wrong place for that.
Well, yeah, it's like, you know, you had a whole class in law school about legal research, right? At least we did our first semester.
We didn't do that in
You
South
did not
Africa.
do that. Oh, okay.
No.
All right. Well, it's a good class
This is
that
getting
law schools should have.
Yeah. Kind of taught us to it, like they taught it to us just in our classes, you know, like, okay, here's an essay, research this. They didn't teach you how. Like,
Okay.
realize we should have done that now. Yep, cool.
Well, it's like a new trend in American law. Well, I say that having graduated from law school 12 years ago, so it's maybe not so new anymore.
12 years ago is still new in law, from what I understand. So
Yes, it was newish at the time. I think probably
Okay.
20 years ago, not as many law schools had that program. But
But
yeah,
the
I
thing
mean,
is
it's
how
just
to find something.
how to find something is a real problem, and it's a real skill that you develop through deliberative
I've developed it in law.
practice.
I haven't developed it in coding yet. But I mean, I've spoken to my friends who've got CS degrees, and that's say that they do exactly the same thing. They just Google it. So
Yeah.
I think they use the term Google very freely, but I think they know, they look it up is basically what they're saying.
Yeah,
So it's me able to look it up, and I think that that's a very good analogy, especially for the lawyers or the law students here.
The skill comes from being able to identify what you've looked up and find separate the wheat from the chaff, right? And say,
exactly.
Oh, that's not
Exactly.
any good. Oh, that's not good. Oh, this answers my question.
Right.
So yeah,
right.
saying
Knowing-
it's just
knowing the right words
Googling
that-
it is
Yeah,
dismissive
knowing
of
the-
the actual skill. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Knowing the right words that should accompany what you're looking for.
Right.
The right words to type in.
Can you drop this into the Slack, or is that going to be confusing to people?
I'll put it in the Slack. I know it doesn't have a lot of context for everybody.
Uh-huh.
Hopefully it's helpful. So, I mean, I think the short answer is I prefer the one-line if statement.
Here I
For
would prefer
clarity,
it as well.
unless,
Here I would prefer it too.
Okay. Well, I mean, regardless of not to set a contrast, just to say the takeaway is I would generally use the one-line if statement unless it's really unreadable to have a one-line if statement.
And the really unreadable would be like extended variable names, like if you're going to have like, right? Is that going to make it very unreadable?
Yeah, or if you had like another if statement embedded in here, right? There's 3 tracks you have to do. That would be like that nested if statements. That becomes really hard to read.
Yeah, we've seen that
Horizontally.
on the in the Google Sheets. That was, yep.
And then when you get to that complexity level, there are other ways to reduce it. I generally tend not to like the setting another variable to a temporary variable because that becomes
that's
very
not
hard
what
to
I-
trace.
That's not what I was suggesting. Just
Okay.
but yeah.
Like, regardless
temporary
again of
variable
a
is
contrast,
good.
or I'm not necessarily responding directly to
Sure.
that. Just wanted to.
So,
That's fair.
I'm just going to say, just to recap, we need to ask a question early on who's filling out the form. If it's an attorney, then we said that variable attorney. And then when we get to the signatures, we'll say, if this variable is true, then use this routine. And if it's not true, use this one. That's correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe what I'll do is I'll just put on that example because that's really, I think, where we ended up.
Okay.
Yeah. And now I think we've lost most of our audience. But
Perfect. I'm sorry we hijacked this. I really am. but it
Yeah,
was-
we did hijack it.
I
So-
think a lot of people just were ready to leave at 2, which is okay.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a
This
hijack.
was really helpful, though, Quentin. Thank you very much for your time and your patience.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, no problem.
So Lance,
I will say that I felt a lot closer an hour ago, but we'll get there.
It's not funny how
nothing
that
goes
goes
that way.
sometimes.
Yeah,
The
the closer
more
you get
learn.
to the end, the more you
Yeah.
realize you're very
Right.
far away.
How many steps there are to get there? Yeah. So, but no, this was great. Thanks a lot. And do put this recording up too. So we
I will.
can,
Yes, I'll do that. now.
yeah. So we can kind of, because I'll probably have to watch it multiple times really to get all the
too.
intricacies.
Okay. I will do that.
Okay.
I'll stop
Lance, I'll
recording
talk
now.
to you now on Slack, okay?